Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is The Illusion reporting from somewhere on Spaceship Earth. Why do the police exist? Why do the police exist? And that's the question that can unlock this whole thing that's going on right now with this one aspect, which is the defund the police and the police are the problem. Why do the police exist? Why do the police exist? It's a pretty simple reason why the police exist in these modern times. Is because people refuse to take responsibility for themselves. I mean, if you want to defund the police, how about giving them no reason to be funded in the first place? That's sort of the way I look at it, is this whole defund and about the police doesn't address the problem of why are there police? Why are there police in our society? I mean, we're a first world nation with affluence and all of these things, and there's a certain element that people are saying it has something to do with racial issues and that. And again, I go, why are there police? It's definitely not to hold one group of people down and raise another group of people up. Why are there police? And the answer, again, is super simple. It's people refuse to take responsibility for themselves. People absolutely refuse to take responsibility for themselves. You're in charge of your own reality, right? If I look at my life, I used to have a lot of interaction with police once upon a time. They weren't doing me any special favors, because I was a white guy or something. They were like, you're an idiot and you're arrested. And why was that? I used to think they were picking on me. And then I realized that it was because I wasn't taking responsibility for myself, for my actions. And as a society, I don't think we want to take responsibility for ourselves as a whole. We want someone else to be in charge. Pass the buck mentality of somebody else is going to run this. So this whole weird defund the police thing, at the bottom of it all is basically somebody needs to take care of this problem. The system needs to handle this problem. We're not going to take care of it. You need to figure it out. The money's not being spent wrong. You're hiring the wrong people. But what is the problem? What is the problem with our society where cops are necessary? Because the people that are out there capturing the attention with this thing aren't actually leading by example, because they're actually making a strong case for police by smashing things up and lighting things on fire and blocking roads and just basically being a pain in the ass. Because if you don't want police, you have to act like adults and be willing to police yourself and your community. And again, as it goes to that thing is, we're all in this together, whether we are or we aren't. We are. We're on a ball called Earth, if you buy into the globe theory. But we're all in this together, even divided. You can be as divided and as against anyone as you want to be, but at the end of it all, we're still in this together. So this whole narrative of that we're not in this together is kind of ridiculous on a certain level. So yeah, is if people don't want to take responsibility for themselves, there's always going to be police. There's always going to be police as long as people get into cars and drink and drive. There's always going to be police as long as people decide to steal from the store. There's always going to be police as long as as people think that it's okay to solve issues with violence. There's always going to be police as long as there's crazy people who want to do crazy things to not crazy people. So again, is the issue seems to be much deeper than having anything to do with the police. The question, as I ask, is why don't you want to take responsibility for yourselves? Why don't people that are targets of the police, instead of giving the police the finger, take responsibility for themselves? And again, as I see, a large element of this defund the police movement is a criminal element. It's at this point, it's becoming kind of obvious that the people really promoting this defund the police thing are criminals that don't want any police so they can go and behave like criminals. And because the people that are responsible for themselves don't need law enforcement, except when someone who isn't responsible for themselves decides to be irresponsible, and then you call the police and be like, hey, this person is doing wrong by me. I mean, you can look at most of the incidences, and with all of them, there's always exceptions, but most of them had the police being called into said situation because somebody was behaving irresponsibly. And on the flip side, we have this situation where people that are behaving responsibly are having the police tell them they can't open their businesses. You got to wear a mask. You got to stay at home. You got to do this. That's what fries my brain about this whole thing, because I don't need the police personally in my own life. But if there's a bad element, I definitely want the police available before I solve the problem myself, right? Once I solve the problem myself, it opens up a whole can of worms. But yet I have earned that responsibility for myself. It's just weird how convoluted it is, because I want to live in a world without police. I'll be super clear. Like, I want to be able to go about my business without anyone telling me what I need to do. But the only way I get to do that is I have to take full responsibility for my life, for my actions, and be willing to admit when I make a mistake or I'm wrong. It's that thing is there wouldn't need to be any police on the streets of America giving people traffic tickets if people would drive like adults and responsible. There wouldn't need to be like speed limits if people would speed responsibly. There wouldn't need to be crazy laws if people wouldn't get in their cars drunk. There wouldn't need to be most of these police things if people would stop behaving like criminals. It's very obvious to me. If you don't want the police in society, stop manifesting them being in our society by acting irresponsibly. Because I'm on the thing of like, let's put the police out of business through our actions. You want to defund the police, stop justifying a reason to hire them. I want to live in a world where there doesn't need to be security guards. I want to live in a world where there doesn't need to be locks on doors and all of that kind of stuff. But that's unrealistic on this day in 2020, right? But we shouldn't have to live like that. But again, is because we've deferred our authority to the system, because we don't want mob rule, right? Because one real quick way to make people take responsibility is the way they used to do it back in the day, is like, take care of them. Vigilante justice, right? We don't want that either. So I just look at this thing and I'm like, if you don't want the police to exist, stop giving them a reason to exist. It's funny because, like, the protest thing I'm fully into, and I'm actually like buy into it on a certain level about like the big picture, but I watch it and I go, if you don't want the police to be here, throwing rocks at them isn't going to get them to go away. Like, giving them a reason not to show up is how you get them to go away. Like, I haven't had any interactions with I had the interactions with the police when I went down to that riot, like on Fairfax. Yeah, there were cops there and they arrested me. It wasn't because there was anything going on except people destroying a neighborhood, lighting cars on fire. Like what do people expect? Like, if it's a very obvious answer to me in the big picture is yeah, if you don't want police, maybe put fathers back in the home, maybe stop breaking up families. Seems pretty like a good place to start. Like, encourage like family solutions. I mean, alcoholism, like, there's a big problem. What are you going to do with that? Like, people can't seem to hold their liquor in our society, get drunk, smash things up, hit their wives, hit their husbands, smack their kids around. Well, that's what you would definitely want police for people that can't hold their liquor and go and abuse their family, wouldn't you? You would definitely want the police if some spun out meth head is creeping around your neighborhood with a sharp stick. You would definitely want the police if there was some lunatic running around your neighborhood naked on PCP. I definitely see a need for the police because people are irresponsible for their own actions, and instead of taking responsibility for their actions on a community level too. I mean, the amount of nonsense we put up with our fellow citizens, with our neighbors, with our community members, like, we should put a stop to it. We as communities shouldn't allow bad seeds to exist within our community. We know who the troublemakers are. We absolutely know who the troublemakers are. But we defer to the police, right? Like if we formed a little community and we're like, wow, we know who the person is who's breaking in around the neighborhood. You know what I mean? You know who the person is who's driving around drunk in your neighborhood. You know the person in your small town who goes to the bar and drives home pickled, who eventually kills the family on the way home. You know who the gangster is with the tattoos and the AK who's shuffling crack on your street corner. But we as a community defer to the police and then put them in harm's way when we know as a society, you want everyone with the science, want to talk about the science. We scientifically know now that children that are raised in broken homes with single parents are more likely to commit crimes and be a burden on society and have police interactions than families that have both parents at home without alcoholism, right? Even families that are together, if they have alcoholism and abuse issues, well, there you go. You're damaging your children and you're making criminals. And that's a generalization, because plenty of people come from broken homes and single homes and abusive homes and turn out to be model citizens that don't require any police interaction. But again, as I look at it, is it's pretty easy to blame the police and scapegoat personal responsibility, right? Isn't it? Isn't that the real problem here? with people don't want to take responsibility for themselves or their communities or their neighbors. And I got it. Who wants to deal with a crazy person? Who wants to deal with somebody who's on drugs or drunk on alcohol, who has a bad temper or a bad spirit or is a psychopath that lives in your community that's terrorizing it? Who's going to stand up for that? No. So you call the cops, and the cops have to come in and deal with that. And then when it goes sideways, you're like, well, why did that go sideways? You know what I mean? Again, these police aren't showing up because they're not being invited in on a societal level. The cops are here because we make them relevant on a level. You don't want cops. Take responsibility for yourself. So I look at it like that. You want to defund the police, that's fine. I agree that we have huge mental health issues in our society, huge drug addiction problems, but putting that all on the backs of the police, that's crazy. When nobody has to take responsibility for themselves, nobody's got to take responsibility for themselves. That's yeah. Do I believe that anyone should be busted for marijuana in our society? No. Do I believe that people should that people should be busted for the possession of drugs? No. Do I believe that when you're committing a crime high on drugs, you should probably get the book thrown at you? Absolutely. You want to get high and do stupid things? You should pay the consequences. We should pay we got to stop giving people free passes too. And yeah, we have to. Is blame the cops, or do we look into the criminal justice system? Do we look into the scapegoat of again us electing people in positions of power? Like, we as society don't know who our district attorneys are. We as a society don't pay any attention to the idiots that get voted in and continue the chain of pain. So who's really to blame here? Is it the police, or is it the society as a whole? And again, I think my issue is I think the police are a low-hanging fruit. I personally want to live in a society without police. But I also want to live in a society with people that take their responsibility super serious and live by the do no harm ethic or reality or code or whatever you want to call it. Maybe we need to look at why God is being removed from our society. I mean, to blame the police and be like, well, we're just going to yank their money out. Like, well, there you go. There you get the violence has skyrocketed throughout this country. Like, why is that? Why is that? Because people don't have any checks to their inability to take responsibility for themselves, because people think it's okay to be violent because they don't want to take responsibility for themselves. So I don't know. Again, I think we're looking at the wrong problem. I think the first place you begin to look is the family unit, and then the second place you begin to look is drug and alcohol addiction and mental health. Family first, drug and alcohol next, and address it that way and begin to take care of these things. But I don't hear anyone putting out solutions like that. I don't hear anybody talking about making sure children are raised with families. I don't hear that. I just hear the cops are bad and blah, 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 blah. Throw a rock through a window and make it okay. And blah, 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 blah. I don't hear any solutions, man. So yeah, there's gonna be cops until we get to the solution phase of this, because we've yet to address the problem. I guess you can't find the cure if you're not willing to look at the problem. The problem has nothing to do with the cops. The problem has to do with us as a society on the personal level, and we're not taking responsibility for ourselves. And our neighbors are bringing us down because they don't want to take responsibility for themselves. And until everybody takes responsibility for ourselves, I suppose there's always going to be cops. stuffing people into cells. People want to live like that, dude. People want to live like that. It's not their choice. Yeah, well, we should start holding, you know who should be held criminally responsible? Fathers who abandon their families. They should be doing time. Walk away fathers should be doing time. There's a good place to start. There's a good place to start, man. Parents who abandon their children to single parenting to the other person. You know, that's the real issue from what I can tell. Children need parenting. Parenting. It's not the end-all, be-all answer, because sometimes there's just bad people out there. And what are we going to do about the bad people? There's just bad people, too. I don't know. It's just what I was thinking about in the shower. Anyways, The Illusion, signing off.